Hello YouTube, and welcome to probably the final part of this tutorial, the BMI calculator. So in this part we are going to make sure that this actually calculates a BMI or your BMI. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we are going to create a class for that. So I'll go to the lib folder, and we need a new file, and I'm going to call this BMI underscore calculator .dart. And then inside here we are going to have the class name, and I'm going to call this BMI calculator. And then inside here we are going to go ahead and then create the variables that we need. Now we know definitely we need the height to be able to calculate the BMI, so we are going to say we want the height, and also we need the weight. Okay, so we are going to get the weight also, and of course all of these we need to store that in a variable. So I'm going to make this a double, and I'm going to make this private to this class only. Okay, and I'm going to give it a default value of 0.0. so if no BMI is calculated, we could just leave it as so it wants to be that. Let me do that for it, but let's see, the value field blah blah blah, no problem, because we'll go ahead and then create the constructor for this. So let me see if I can use this property. So convert and generate, copy with generate constructor, and then there we go. I think this is kind of too close, I can barely see the difference, so I'm just going to give a space here. And what is this weird source file thing? Whatever is wrong with this, I'm just going to use this bulb and tell it to ignore for this file. Okay, and then let's move on. So the next thing we need to do here is we are going to move on, and then I'm going to create a function that is going to okay, or if you are going to use pounds and inches, then this is what you have to do with a conversion rate of 703. In our case, what we have here is our height in centimeters, and if you want to convert from centimeters to meters, you divide the value by 100. Okay, so this our formula is going to look like this. So we have our weight, which is in kilograms, that's fine. Now our height, we need to divide that by 100 and then square the value. So there is a math library in that gives us the power to square things. Now to square something, I could have just said height times height, and that also works, but I'm going to use that math library. So I can go back to the top of the file and I'm going to import, not import material, but I'm going to import that math. So you just need to type that, your colon, and then math, and I believe it's uppercase. No, it's lowercase. Not much. Come on. So I see why I'm having that trouble. I spelled that wrongly. So now that we have this here, we are going to use the power function here. So this basically allows us to what do you call it, raise something to an exponent. So the x you see here is the value, okay, that I want to raise, and to what exponent. So raised to the power 10, raised to the power 3, raised to the power 1. That's what I'll put here. So x here is going to be our height divided by 100. Okay, now if we wanted, we could equally put this in bracket. So what we can do is we can put this in bracket and put this in bracket. Then the exponent here is going to be the power. In our case, a squared. So we're going to put in raised to the power 2. Okay, then finally we need to return that BMI value. So I'm going to say BMI, and because of what do you call it, the number of decimal places, we want to make sure that we have like 1 decimal place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say BMI dot to our string. We've seen this before. So to our string, to string as fixed, sorry, to string as fixed, and then here we are going to say 1. That's what we need. And let me see, what is the complaint here? Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this final, and that should fix the problem. Okay, so not all complaints are usually good. So this is the formula that is going to calculate the BMI, but we still need to do a little bit of setup also, because if you look at the design, we have an explanation and certain things that we have to pass in here depending on the person's BMI. So how can we do that? Well, it's quite simple. We can create another function that will get us the result. So this is going to be a string type. So we're going to say string, and let's call this get result. And it's not going to take anything. And then inside here, what we are going to do is we are going to use an if statement. Okay, so we are going to say if, now BMI ranges from different ranges, if that's something I can say. So I'll say if the BMI, and if you are wondering where these ranges come from, well, you can do a simple quick Google, and depending on the range, so you can see 18.5 means you are underweight, and then normal is 18 to 24, and so on and so forth. So you can use these ranges to figure out what you want to say. So for example, if somebody is underweight, then possible nutrition deficiency, blah blah blah. I hope you get the idea. So that's what we are going to do. So we are going to say that if our BMI is less than the 18.5, I believe, then we can say that the person is what? Underweight. So we can return the keyword underweight, and I'm going to make this uppercase. I hope my spelling is right. Oops. So that's the first part. So what if the person is not in that range? Then we can come out and say, then if the person is not there, then we have our usual else. Then we can check again if our BMI is within the 18. So if I can go back here, our BMI is within this range, then the person is not. 7.9. Then we want to say the person is overweight. Yeah, so we can return overweight. So that needs to be a string. Now, if we've checked the person for underweight, healthy weight, or normal weight or something, and we've checked for overweight, if the person doesn't fall in between all of this, we don't have to check for, like, if the person is above should I say 30. Okay, so I'm going to end with class here. So if the person is above this, then I don't want to go on and check for all of this. So all I'm going to do here is to end this and say else. Then I'm just going to return that then you are obese. Okay, so I'm going to return string obese. So this is saying that if we check your BMI and you are in this, then we return you are underweight and case closed. If we check your BMI and you are within this range, then we say you are healthy weight. If we check your BMI and you are within this range, then we tell you are overweight. And if we check 1, 2, 3 and you don't fall into any of these, then definitely you are obese. That is why you don't fit into any of these categories. Okay, so I hope that makes a lot of sense. And we have the final part here, and it's going to be a lot to type, so I'm just going to fast forward this and then I'll see you when I'm done. Alright, so this is what we would have for the interpretation. Okay, so it's a similar thing here. So we are just saying if you fall into this range, then we are going to return you need to eat more. This is just my own made up thing, so you can come up with yours. And then so we are just literally repeating this by changing like what we have there. And I don't know why I keep omitting this. Let me just put it in there. So you get the idea. So this is the interpretation, which is going to show up here. So we have the explanation. So we have this, we'll get the value, and then we have this over here for the interpretation. So I'll put this in the description so that you don't also have to type all, or you can make up your own. It's up to you. It's your app. You can make it as you see fit. Okay. All right. So how are we going to make use of this? Well, we have to make sure that the result screen is aware that we are going to give it those values. Okay, so how do we do that? We need to make sure that the constructor for this result screen has how do we call it? Well, the constructor of course is going to demand those, so we need to create the result text, and then the interpretation for the constructor, so that when we call this, we can pass those values to it. So to hit on that again, if we go to the result screen, the constructor, so just imagine a constructor, the guy who is going to construct what you want. You need to tell it that, okay, to construct this, I'll take this, I'll need this to construct that for you. So if we want to say that, okay, once we hit on calculate, we need to construct this, that, then we need to give it those values that it will need to construct. I don't know if this my analogy makes sense, but I'll put a link to a card to one of my tutorials on the constructor. But anyway, let's move on. So for our result screen here, we are going to do that right inside here. Now I could get rid of the key, but I'll just leave it, and I'll bring this down here. Actually don't need all of this, but then I'll just leave it in there. Okay, so after this key stuff, we need to, before that, in fact, it will be a lot easier to do it this way so that you don't get confused. So what I'm going to do is create all those variables that I need. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just say final, and then say that I'll be taking a string, or I'll need a string, and the string here is just going to be the BMI result. Okay, then the next thing here is I'm going to also create what else do we need? I know it's going to be a string. We need the interpretation or something, so the result text. Okay, I know my names can be weird. And then finally we would also need to have the interpretation, so we need string interpretation, like so. So initially what I was going to do was to actually create the required and everything myself, when you could actually just do this. So we're going to add all the final, and then I'll format this. So I was actually going to do this manually. Yeah, so now we can now make use of these values. So we can come back here. Why is my home screen complaining? Okay, so you'll soon understand why that is doing that, but let's go ahead and then actually let me close all of these so that we don't have so many things in our way. So now we can make use of these values. Okay, so we just need to comb through and then find out where we put them. So I'm going to hit calculate here, and then we need to get this normal, so that is going to be the result text. So where we have the normal, we are going to put in the result text. Then where we have the 19.5, if I can find it, that will be the BMI result. So let's say BMI result. So it is telling me it is a null. So that's because of, I believe, this const. So let me cut it off, and then I'm going to place it here, and I'm going to place it here, and I'm going to place this here also. I knew this was going to bite me eventually. So so we have normal, we have the BMI result. Explanation is going to remain as explanation, and then this over here is going to be the interpretation. Okay, so over here we are going to get rid of all of this text, and then this is going to be the interpretation, like so. So we are experiencing the same thing, we just need to get rid of this const value. Okay, save that, and we shouldn't break anything. Of course we do have some error, that's fine, because the constructor here, so each time we say result screen, we need to provide these values so that it can use them. So we need to head back to the home screen here, and then make sure we make use of it. How do we make use of it? It's quite simple. So we need to initialize, or should I say instantiate, that BMI calculator class, and then pass in those values. How do you do that? We've done this before and it's quite simple. I'm even thinking of where to actually put it. So what I'm going to do is make a few changes here. So I'm going to get rid of this and then use this rather, so that I can do something like BMI calculator, and I'll just call this BMI calculator, and this is going to be equal to the BMI calculator class again. We've seen this before, and here you can see it's expecting height and weight, and we already have these values, so we don't need to worry so much about them. So I'm going to just move this and try and then format this properly so that we can see things clearly. Let me put a comma here, and then good. So now the body might complete, blah blah blah, no problem. So now that we have this, we can then return the result screen. So we can return our result screen, and then we can pass in the required values that the constructor wants. So because of the configurations we made to the result screen constructor, now it is expecting us to give us that BMI result that we said we would give to it here, the result text, and then interpretation. So this BMI result is very simple. We are going to use the BMI calculator that we created here. I think that's even a long name. So we would say BMI calculator using the dot operator, then we can access what? The calculate BMI method, just like that. So this is going to go ahead and then call this calculate BMI, and we've already given it the height and then the weight, and it's going to do that calculation for us. If I can get back to the right screen. Then the next thing is the result text. So the result text is going to follow the same line. So I'm going to say BMI calculator thought, and then we want the get results. And then finally, the interpretation is going to be a similar thing. So BMI calculator, using the dot operator, we get the interpretation. Okay, and I'm going to kind of put my commas here, and then let me see what the issue is. A comma is missing here, I believe, and then we format that. Okay, so this is what everything looks like now, because the constructor says that it requires the BMI result text, and interpretation. So that's how come we need to provide them here. We created an instance of the calculator class, which gives us access to these functions here, and then each of these functions are able to do what? Get us the BMI value by calling the calculate BMI function. This gets us the result, and then this gets us the interpretation. Okay, so let's see if our logic works. So I'm going to ignore the age because that's just should I say just there to make it cooler. So we have the weight. So let's assume